Welcome back to the Mod CK2 series, and as hopefully it says in the title of this video, this episode we are going to be making a culture for CK2. Now, we're not going to do anything super fancy with this one. We're not going to be creating custom graphics or face packs or anything like that for it. We're just going to use what's available to us using base game CK2 and the DLC, obviously, if you've got it. So, first thing you want to do is go into your CK2 mod folder and set up your sort of basics for your mod. So we're going to create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call it culture. Very straightforward. You can give that a name as long as it corresponds to your .mod file. It doesn't really matter whatever you call that. And we're going to call this one culture.mod. Now, a couple of you have left some comments in Discord on the last video that you didn't really understand the way the .mod file works. There is a couple of ways to do that. You can make it as I made it there, just simply by right-clicking, creating a new document, and changing the file name extension to, say, .mod rather than .text. File name extensions aren't enabled by default in Windows, just to stop people fucking with it and blowing up their PC. So another way to get around that is to create a new text document, and then from this menu, once you've filled in all your information, so CK2 is nice and good. Let's pretend that's our document here. Go ahead and go save as, and then change it from file type .text to all types, and then you can manually type it in here rather than having to do the whole right-click rename thing. So you can call it culture.mod, or let's call it, just to show that this does what we'll call it, Steven.mod. Shout out to Steven. And there you go. You can see that it is called Steven.mod. So the next step, go into your culture folder and create a new folder called common. No capital letters, just simply the word common. Then you want to open up this folder as well. And in here, you want to make a folder called cultures, because that's where we're putting our cultures. And that's it. That's your entire file structure set up. All that's left to do now is actually to create your culture file. And it really is just as simple as that. So we're going to make a very fun culture for the base game called lovely boy culture. There we go. And then that is simply left as a .text file created, as you can see there, lovelyboy.text. Now, as we're making any mod with CK2, I'd recommend for beginners, and honestly, I do it myself still when making mods, go and look at files that already exist, files that have been made by the mod makers, and the default CK2 files. It'll really help making sure everything's in the right place and making sure you've got sort of the right brackets, the right features. But as we make this here, I'm going to do it completely from scratch. I'm going to go through it bit by bit what each section means and what it sort of implies for gameplay. So we're going to start off here, and we're going to create, for the culture, we're going to create the cultural group. So this is the first thing you do when creating a new culture, unless you're adding a culture to a pre-existing group. But for this, I'm going to make a whole thing just so you can see it from scratch. So we're going to name our cultural group the lovely cultural group, because we are very lovely in our cultural group. I'm not sure I'm going with that one. And then you want to define a graphical culture for it. So the graphical culture determines the faces, the units, the buildings in particular. So I'm going to do for this one your very standard Western GFX. So that means it'll use the Western buildings, so French, German, English style buildings. And then this is something you've needed to add since Holy Fury. You want to make it so that this culture doesn't appear in the Animal World start for the new Shattered World thing that they've added. Kind of a bit of a pain in the ass, but you've got to add it anyway. So, or you can leave it blank and your culture will turn up in the Animal World if that's something you want. Maybe a culture of animal slayers or something like that. So you want to do alternate start. And this is kind of a ball ache, I know, but it's something that just has to be done since Holy Fury. You want to say not. The game has the flag alternate start parameter, spelled like that. Yep, that is definitely right. And then key equals special. If you can spell, definitely does help out a lot when making new mods. Special culture value equals, I think it's Animal World. Let's go with that one. I'm almost certain that's right. If it's not, I'll edit it in now. Okay, so that will make sure that your culture doesn't turn up if you're playing with the Animal World start. I know it's a weird thing to add, but it's just worth mentioning. So that is your culture, basically, the cultural group defined. So say, for example, this would be the equivalent of Norse, say. And then inside that you would have, Danish, Swedish, Norwegian. But that is our equivalent, the lovely cultural group. So now you actually want to define the specific culture that goes inside the group. So we are going to have, naturally, the lovely boy culture. And with this, you want to do basically what you did a second ago and define another graphical culture for it. That just allows you to add some variation between closely related cultures that might not use the same graphics if you want to do that for whatever reason. But we are going to use Western GFX for this one as well. Then You can also do the animal kingdom thing again to stop it appearing. I'm not going to bother with that right now because we've basically defined it in the cultural group, so we don't need to do that. You need to add a color for your particular culture. Now, these are RGB values, which is a very common sort of, how would I describe that, coding feature. The amount of red the color has, the blue the color has, and the green the color has, right? So we're just going to do, I'm going to completely make this up on the fly, because who the hell knows RGB values off the top of their head. I'm going to do 0, 3 of each, so it's going to be a very boring, bland color, because you've got equal amounts. Right, that can be whatever you want it to be. It's worth experimenting with these. There are also tools online for finding particular RGB values. Then you want to define your male names. You do that by typing in male_names equals, and then another open bracket. And then within this bracket, you want to throw all your male names that your culture can have. So we're going to have lovely, we're going to have boy, and you just type them out as you would. You know, you don't need commas, you don't need any sort of breaks. Just a space will denote a different name. Worth also putting capitals because they are names. Lovely boy, lovely hyphen boy. I don't know if hyphens work, but this will be an interesting experiment whether or not this blows up the game. We'll have lovely boy, one word, and then we'll also have top bog. Sure, why the hell not? And then you also want to do the same for your female names as well. So female_names. And then the brackets. Don't forget the brackets, otherwise things will definitely break. Female names, we'll have lovely, and then girl. And then we'll have lovely girl. And you sort of get the picture. I'm not going to do it for every single one. After that, you can have your particular cultural features. So these are gameplay effects. So you might want to have, for example, from dynasty prefix. And then set a specific prefix for, this would be the equivalent for say, you have an English count, might be called Stephen of London. You could give him something like that, so we could call it, my dynasty prefix is going to be lovely, right? So if my character, if you spawn a new courtier in a city, and the city was called Giantsburg, you could have lovely boy, lovely Giantsburg, if that makes sense. This is just the from dynasty prefix. Another one in-game, rather than of, you have the Norse one, which is af. So you might have Bjorn, af, you know, Swedish name. I haven't explained it very well, but that's basically what that is there for. You don't have to add this at all. It's just a nice little feature that you can put on there as well. And then similarly, along with other nice little features you can have, you can add male patronyms. So, for example, we could say when a son is born to a male, he will be called his father's name, and then this is the prefix that goes on the end of it. So we could say lovely son. So if, for example, Topbog has a child, and he is part of the lovely boy culture, his son will be called, you know, Stephen Topbog lovely son, for example. And then that's the equivalent of, obviously, son or daughter in the base game. So you can also do the same for female patronyms as well, but we won't bother for that. I would recommend looking up, and I'll put a link to this on the wiki that shows all the different things you can add to your culture. I'm not going to go through them all here, because we'll be here for ages. I just want to get the very basics down, and then you can sort of experiment and add what you want here. Other things worth mentioning, you can add things such as allow looting in this section, allow lotting, allow looting, yes, which will allow them to raid, and then you could also say seafarer, which will basically make them a copy of the Norse culture. Seafarer, yes, which will allow them to raid overseas with ships. If you add those two flags, it's very simple. That's all you need to do to your culture to make them seafaring raiders, as you would like to. I'd also recommend adding, this is sort of essential to any culture. You want to do default culture modifier, which will just make the game know that it's a default culture. You can add particular modifiers to it, but that's a little more complex. We won't worry about that today. We just want to get a basic modifier. There we go. Close enough. Modifier, default culture modifier. So that is essentially it. Genuinely, that is it in making a culture. So just to, again, go through it from the start to the finish here, you've got your cultural group defined as lovely, and the graphical culture of that group in particular, Western GFX. We've got a little block of code here just saying don't show it up if you've set it to Animal World. Only need to do that if you're playing on the whole randomized world post-Holy Fury thing. And then you've got your actual cultural group here. So our cultural group is Lovely Boy. You should probably tab it, so it's just good programming practice to tab it inside. So you see there's this line here. That's just meant to illustrate to you when you read this back what is contained within this particular culture, or, you know, what's contained within that code block. Makes it a little easier to read if you have it like that, so you can actually see what is contained within Lovely Boy here. So we can see that within the Lovely Boy culture, that it uses the Western GFX culture. It is a very bland, boring color. The male names are Lovely Boy, Lovely Boy, Lovely Boy, and Top Bog. Same with female names. The From Dynasty prefix is Lovely. Again, you don't need that. That's just me showing off some of the little features you can throw in. Male patronym, Lovely Son. Again, you don't need that. That's just some features. Same with Allow Looting and same with Seafarer. And then it's always worth throwing in the modifier default culture modifier so the game knows it is a default culture. I don't know what is an exception to that. I guess the animals might be different, but to my knowledge, every culture has this. Maybe China doesn't as well, or the Aztecs. I'm not entirely sure. But that is your culture done. And then, I mean, that is it. Like, I mean, I'm being genuinely sincere. There is nothing else you need to do at that stage besides put another bracket. And then with Notepad++, you can quite clearly see if you have closed this statement correctly, because a bracket will glow red if it has a corresponding bracket. So if we click Lovely Boy, you can see the other one there. If you click alternate start, you can see that one, and then you can also see the has alternate start parameter is highlighted as well. And that's it. That is your culture. Congratulations. You can define some other things as well. You can say that you're not allowed to use this culture in the character modifier, in the ruler designer, with some code, which again, I'll link it all on the wiki. The wiki has a full list of everything you can add to cultural modding. Don't listen to his lies, he's an idiot. Instead of typing graphical culture, type in graphical cultures. I knew I'd forgotten to do so. I knew there would be at least one bug, but it's a great learning experience here for me to fuck things up immediately. So graphical cultures with an S on the end, despite the fact we're only using one, but hey, you've just got to be careful about that. It's because you can define more than one, right? So you could change the units here to use Western units and, say, Eastern units, or Southern units, or Northern units, or whatever. You can use different types, which is why it's an S, cultures. But that is it. That is all you need for your culture. At that stage, you want to go back and finish off your .mod file, because now we need to actually set it up so that the game understands what we're telling it to do with these files. So we've opened up culture.mod in our Notepad or Notepad++, depending on what you're using here. And this bit's very straightforward. Again, you're just telling the game, telling the launcher how to read these files and how to apply them to the game as it loads. So give your mod a name for a start. So I'm going to call this one culture. Again, I'm keeping it very vague. The path, this is fairly important. So this shows the game where the files for this mod are kept. So for this one, it's just in the folder mod, and then chances are that will be the true for every single one you do. /mod/culture, because that is where the location of this folder is. You're trying to point it to that. So that's what the path parameter means here. And then the final one, you can set, if you're feeling daring, if you have a mod that's not compatible with base game, you can set a custom save directory by adding the flag, by adding the parameter user directory, user_dir, and then you can call that culture. So now whenever this game saves, it will save to ck2/culture/save games rather than just ck2/save games. That way, like I said, if you've got something that's incompatible for a total conversion or something like that, you don't want them to be able to load up base game mods or base game saves within a total conversion mod and vice versa, so you put it in a specific directory so that the game can't pull those files. We're not going to do that because this is just a very shitty cultural mod, so we'll ignore that for now. The quickest way to see if this works is check your launcher, and we can see culture, so we know that our .mod file is set up correctly because the game can see it and knows that that is the .culture mod there. So we're going to load in game. We're going to play as a random character. Oh, you know what would be easier? We could, there are two ways to test a cultural mod, to be honest with you. Number one, just create a random character with a custom ruler designer, or number two, just load in as any character and use the console to edit their culture accordingly. You know, we'll do the custom game setup because that way it will also allow us to see any issues we've got as well. It's a good way of finding out what you've broken. So let's go into this guy here, King Sigibert of Middle Francia. Let's go to his culture, and we can see that the lovely culture is working and the lovely boy subculture is right there. So that is actually done. It's actually working. I'm kind of surprised I didn't fuck up more. But hey, let's load in game and just see if we've got those features we added. So we did add raiding and looting, I believe. So let's just double check that one. And if we hover over Lovely Boy, we can see there that our culture allows us to raid overseas with ships and raid infidel neighbors for loot. So the one thing left to do now is to set up the localization. It's generally something I do last. So the localization is where you tell the game not to display the code from the files you've written, but instead display something that's easier read by the person playing the game. So right now it's getting the Lovely Boy culture and the lovely cultural group straight from that culture file we made a second ago. Now that's got all the lowercase l's, and if you have descriptions. It will say like lovely boy underscore desk rather than an actual description of it. So we want to go set the localization. Again, I do that to last because it helps you find bugs with your mod that you've made if you do it last, because it will actually show the code rather than some sort of replacement that you've made it easy to read. So we're going to close CK2 here, and we're going to go into our common folder. So this is our, I'll go back here. So this is our mod. Next to the common folder, I should say, we want to make a folder simply called Localization. Do they spell it the English way or do they spell it the American way? I'm going to have a look. Because Paradox are good friends of mine from Sweden, they know how to spell English. Right, okay, so let's go into this folder and actually create a new file, similar to how we made the .mod file. And we're going to want to call that one basically anything. It really doesn't matter. We're going to call it culture, and then the file extension for this one is .csv. Same thing applies to how you made the .mod. If you're having trouble with the file name extension, create a new text document, save it as an all file type, and manually type in that .csv. Or if you've got Windows file name extensions enabled, you can just type it in via the rename. So open this file up, and let me bring it onto the right monitor. Thank you very much. And then in this one, this is how you display the script, the code that we've written, as something more readable by the player. So instead of it saying lovely boy, we want it to say something a little more readable. So we're going to say lovely, lovely boy, I guess. I think it can take hyphens. Then after that, you are going to want to type a number of commas depending on what languages you're using for your localization. So the way it generally works is, I will copy this from, let me come and grab it from here. So the way this works is you will have the code. So the code in this case is lovely boy. Then you'll have what it will display if it's English, what it will display if it's French, German, and then Spanish. Now, I don't know what lovely boy is in French or German or Spanish. Well, I do in French or German, but I don't know Spanish. But just to keep it simple here, we're not going to worry about that. I'm just going to do it in English. So to finish off this particular bit of localization, and to end it, you put an X at the end. You have to include this many colons. Again, I don't know why. It seems a bit weird, but it's just something you do. So for us, because we're only doing it in English, we won't worry about the French. So we want to type in another colon, and then another 2 colons, and then this many colons here. So we want to come and grab this. Wait, another colon, another 2 colons, and I put 1 extra. There we go. So that is what you want to finish your localization with if you're just typing it in English. That tells the game that that is the end of that line, and that's all you need to display for lovely boy. And then, of course, you want to do one for the lovely culture as well, which one we just call it lovely, I think. And then, of course, when you've done this once, you can just copy and paste it, save yourself some time there. Save that. And then close that, and then if we go back into Crusader Kings now, rather than it being all lowercase and looking a bit of a mess, again, it's not too relevant with cultural mod, but if you're doing big events, this is where the localization will really come into play, but we'll see this in future episodes anyway. When we go into the game now, rather than it being all lowercase and, you know, looking kind of ugly, it'll hopefully be a bit more nicer formatted, and we'll just do what we did before. We'll load in as this dude, change his culture or whatever, and then just double check that that's working right. In fact, we should be able to see it from the ruler customizer. Oh god! I've somehow broken the game by pressing a button. Okay, there we go. Right, so we'll just go ahead. Custom game setup. We'll pick literally anyone. Carleman, you'll do. And then if we go to the cultural group this time, you can see that lovely is capitalized and fits the actual scheme of the game there. Lovely boy also says lovely-boy rather than it pulling the text directly from the code. It's now properly formatted and looks a bit nicer. Now again, for events and other things, the localization is a lot more important, but just to make your mod as nicely polished as possible, you are going to want to do this. And that is how you make a mod for the culture in CK2. Now again, there are a lot more complicated things you can do with that. I will link that all below. With a link to the wiki page and all the different customizations you can do to the culture. For example, you could set a particular weighting for names so that some names are more common than others. You can set a percentage chance for children to be named after their parents when they're born. So for AI characters of your culture, obviously it doesn't affect the player, but for AI, they will randomly get named after certain parents. And you know, there's a lot you can do with this, and I want you guys to sort of pick that up for yourself. I don't want to sit here and code out an entire culture with every feature in the game, because I don't think anybody will learn anything if I do that. But go and take a look. I've given you everything you need to get a culture into the game right now. As we've seen, we've sort of played as our lovely boy culture here. There are more complicated things you could do. Give it custom graphics, custom faces, but we will touch on that. That's a bit more complex. We'll do that later on, but that's basically how I did the whole L-Rang in the Mad World thing. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, this has been of some help to some of you out there, and I hope I'm not a completely shit teacher. If this has helped out, let me know. If I have fucked up, if I have given you some bad information, please feel free to correct me in the comments, because we are just trying to do this to help people who have no idea what they're doing. I'm one of them, but hey, that's how you make a culture. And if you want to download the lovely boy culture, you can't, because I'm throwing it in the bin where no one can ever judge me now, mum. If you have any suggestions for this series in general, if you have any criticisms, or if you would like me to slow down, or speed up, or change some of the content, or script some bits, or anything like that, make it even more heavily edited, then let me know. I don't want this to be some sort of perfectly polished product, because honestly, when you're coding, you are going to come across a lot of errors, you are going to fuck up a lot. I still make a lot of mistakes, even with the mod that I was making a couple of days ago for the Game of Thrones series that we've got going on right now. There will be mistakes, you will come across hurdles, so I don't want this to be perfect every single time. I'd like there to be some problems with the whole missing the S off of the end of culture or something like that, just to show you guys that it will happen. And don't get down on yourself if it doesn't work the first time. Just keep trying, follow what I've given you, great resources which I'll link below, and good luck. And I think we better give a shout out to the patrons for making a series like this possible in the first place. Big Dick Timmy, Zachary Harris, Arik, Lucas Holting, Sean Thornton, Loris, Haydog, Sedini, Necrophilin, Asuna Kirito, Facundo Vasquez, Crostis, I'm the Lizard King, Josh Lindeen Tesla, Michael Mullen, Tyler Birch, Palmas Presley, Logan Thorne, Conspired C, Orcswolf, Average Gamer 419, Escape and Jackson Whitman. Thank you all for your support. I feel like there's a name missing from that list. There was Tom Terrier 18. Thank you as well. You are my favourite of all of them. I'm not just saying that to apologise for the fact your name was missing from that list. And speaking of other missing names, we have Nathaniel Lindbergh, Euphrates, Jimmy, Quasar Fox, Jack Allen, Gabriel Van Ders, Llewellyn Thomas, Nathan Flores, Joran de Vries, Dunk217, Zet McDougall, Joseph Beard, Jordan Campbell, Harry McGowan, Will Wade, Chris, Served All the Swede, The Sage, Astro, Nick, Fraser Brennan, Kevin Saunders, Batimus Max, The Insane Pickle, Adam Person, Igor Kozak, Haji Dumar, Noah Gallimore, Panther Pearl, and Alpha Scuff.